Welcome, guys, to a late edition of the BS podcast. But I hope you guys notice that I am in a slightly different looking version of RuneScape, and we'll get into that in a bit. But in case you were living in a cave or not on Twitter or anything this week, you notice there was quite a bit of fuss about HD client. So a little bit of backstory. 117 was all set to release his HD client for Runelite, and then at the 11th hour, he got a note from Jagex saying that they didn't want him to do that anymore, and all of his work would be for nothing. So that caused quite an uproar, as you would imagine, as there are a lot of people that like HD clients, me included, and that set all kinds of riots in Valley and so forth. But in addition to that, 117 wasn't the only high-def client or high-def project that was out there. I've got the team here today from HDOS, and they had their own project, which was basically 2008, 2009 Scape, which is personally my favorite version of RuneScape, because that's kind of what I did most of my big movies in. So I was very interested in kind of how this project was going. And I'm very happy to have the team here with me to discuss kind of how their week went for them, what they have planned, what they did in the past toward this project, and we'll also take a tour around the game in their HD client as we go. So, guys, welcome to the show. I'm really pleased to have you. How are you doing this week?
Yeah, we're happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Great. So before we get into kind of this week, could you go into your story of how you've kind of developed this client and like what was the past to kind of get to where you are today, so people kind of get the backstory of the project itself?
Yeah, sure. Brain, you want to take this one?
Sure. Originally, well, it's back when I was working on HD Helper. Well, maybe you guys don't know what that project was, but it was another. There was another HD project attempt. I think it used the Unity, and well, I was starting tinkering with restoring the 08 graphics back in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Then OSHD released while I was developing it or just messing around with it. And I shelved it until me and Pat started talking about the idea, and I brought it up, and we just continued it back in, what was it, 2020?
Yeah, it was like January 2020, I believe.
Yeah, that's when we continued it, just started messing around with it, and it became a full-fledged project.
Mm-hmm. So just so everyone's aware too, this is Brain Trust with the HDOS team, and is it like Patrick or?
Oh.
It's Brain Free and Patrick.
I'm sorry, Brain Free, not and Patrick. Yeah, so they're with the HDO. We also have Superman in the call, but he might just be a passenger. But I don't know if he wants to talk or not. 117, just so everyone's aware, I talked to him. He gave me back an email interview. I'll get to that at the end of the show. I'll run through what he responded to me. He's very camera shy and didn't want to come on and talk live. He's a pretty introverted guy, which I understand. So I wanted to respect his privacy, but I also have his word. So we'll share that after the show if you guys are curious what he had to say as well. But in the meantime, we're talking to the HDOS team, which is a slightly different project. It's mostly to get the 2008 type graphics in the game, like as you see right now. This is what I'm playing right at this moment. And yeah, so we're talking to them. So I had a list of questions. You went into your kind of what you did. What was your motivation to do 2008 graphics?
I think the motivation, well, originally, so I was just getting into sort of like the world of RuneScape development. You know, I had been doing it kind of by myself for a while, and I was friends with Brain, and we just wanted a project to work on together, and we both had a passion for the HD graphics. We both played back in the day, and we decided, you know what, the last project failed, and we kind of needed to make something that wouldn't fail.
Mm-hmm.
But here we are.
Great. Yeah. So yeah. So going to this week, it's been a bit of an interesting week for you guys. What was kind of the mood, or what happened when you kind of got the news that like you wouldn't be able to continue the project? What were your feelings? How was that news delivered? Like, can you describe kind of what happened there?
Right. So we did get an email the previous day before anybody got the news on the live post. But me and Brain were both busy, and so we actually heard the news along with everybody else. So we didn't really have time to process or think before everybody was just kind of in our inbox letting us know that they're sorry for the loss, and we're like, what loss?
Oh,
You
no.
know? And then we were a little in shock, a little confused for a while, because we had been up already for 4 or 5 months in our open beta phase, with Jagex's awareness of that. So to get a message after the fact was a little bit confusing, to say the least.
Yeah, I can imagine. So as far as Jagex goes, what kind of communication have you had them? Because I know that you talked to them early on. You wanted to get them involved. You wanted this to be something that was, you weren't trying to do this kind of on the side, secretly and like kind of as like a shadow project. This is something that you wanted their involvement on. And I'm curious, what kind of communications have you had with them?
So our earliest communication goes back to our closed beta phase. So after we were testing by ourselves, we had developed for a few months. We decided we wanted to let a small group of people use the client and help us find some bugs. And we weren't sure how Jagex would feel, so we just let them know that that's what we were kind of doing, even though it was small enough they probably never would have known. But we still wanted to, and so we sent them a pretty informal but awareness message, and I have the dates on that. I'll give it to you later, but yeah, that was our first, and then our second one was a bigger one, where we were telling them about our open beta phase, which was months after we had fixed a lot of the bugs. Everything was stable, and we decided we were going to let everybody kind of use it. So we put a lot of time into a message to them, and we didn't get a response. So we kind of thought, okay, they don't want to say yes and they don't want to say no, so we'll just go ahead with it, and if they have something to say later on, then we'll talk to them then. But yeah, that's been our history.
Okay, and then, so you still, other than the message that you got this week, that's all you've really heard from them is like, no, don't do this, like this week.
This is the very first message they ever sent to us.
Okay, and when did you start working on this? When did you start like the project?
Serious development about a year ago.
About a year ago. So you've been working pretty hard on this for almost a year, and now it's the first time you kind of heard back from them.
Yeah, for the first 5 months, it was about 8 to 16 hours a day that we were grinding on this thing.
How many total hours would you say you put into this?
Yeah, I did a calculation earlier. Because Brain and I, we would voice call when we would work, and so I just have logs and logs of like 11-hour, 15-hour calls that are just like ridiculously.
Oh my goodness.
But all in all, over 3,000 hours.
Oh, yeah. Wow, that's just a lot of work. So as far as the project goes, what would you say like is with the biggest challenge, other than like not getting a hold of Jagex, just doing the project? What kind of challenges did you run into?
You can take this one, Brain.
Technical challenges. So there's a list, and we just kept on hitting technical barriers. Probably the longest thing that took for this project was figuring out how to make it actually work and sustain into the future. This DA crafting, because we can just get it HD working for a day just to prove it, but making it stay working long term with what we had in mind to doing it properly was what took a while to do. Making the assets work together, old and new assets mix, and for example, like the new models you see there, it's a mix between the old and the new ones. Making them animate together with the newer and older animations was one of the problems we had to solve.
Yeah, I can imagine. Did you have any of the older assets
compatibility.
from 2008, or was this all completely from scratch?
These are all the original assets from back then.
Oh, really? Okay.
Everything you see is um, the literal restoration of it.
Oh, wow.
Since we're mostly just a restore project, it's verbatim all the assets and map files. Where ultimately the goal is to get 100% to restore. But some of the maps and areas are not completely restored yet. But most of the assets, I'll say about 90% of the assets, models, audio, animations, and such are restored.
Oh,
We
wow.
still have work to do, and there's some bugs. The maps we have to do individually, which we're slowly going through. For example, Edgeville here is fully restored. We had to do this manually.
Oh my goodness. So you did all of this as manual work.
Right. It's a full like map. We have to design the map and make it so that all of the collision, like things that you can walk into or can't, walk on, we need to make sure that we are keeping that while still upgrading it to look how it did back then.
Right.
So you can imagine the challenges that come with that. And we have to do that, pretty much from scratch in a way that works and will always work. So
well, it looks beautiful. I'm really impressed with this. And like I said, this brings me back because this is my kind of era of when I did videos. So just for me personally, this looks gorgeous. I like it.
By the way, if you want to make it look even prettier, on the graphic settings on the top bar, just try ticking them all on.
Oh yeah. In fact, I did that earlier when I was playing in.
Yeah, a couple extra things. I do have a couple like some other challenges. I just sort of listed a couple. Like Brain had said, converting the formats, making them work together, allowing all of the HD models from back in the day to work with the current ones today. Like the old, the HD Goblin needs to look like the old school Goblin needs to look like the HD. So there's a process with that, and that took a little bit of time. Z fighting, that's people who are familiar with graphics programming, they'll know about Z fighting. It's a very pesky bug where when two planes sit on top of each other, when it renders, they'll fight with each other, and some planes will go on top, and then the next frame they'll go down on the bottom. So it kind of makes a flickering effect. Mm-hmm. So we had to fix that, and that was a process as well. And then anti-aliasing, bloom, all the graphic stuff was something that we hadn't really spent as much time tackling in the past, so it's kind of some bit of a learning process there too.
Yeah, I can imagine.
This map right here we had to manually do too. Do you see those pillars in front?
Yep.
In old school, the pillars are moved over to old bit.
Oh, really? So did they redesign the castle and with the newer graphics?
So basically, some of the objects are not in the same places that they are in old school. So we basically have to move things around to make them fit in the right places.
So is there? But this is mapped to the current RuneScape. So if I move here, there's not an actual pillar. Okay.
Exactly.
That's the thing too that I don't understand, and we'll get more into like reasons, I guess, later on. But in my own personal opinion, I don't understand why they wouldn't want any sort of client like made for them. I mean, it's free game development. Like if somebody wants to make like a CryEngine version of the game where I'm playing in like a first person mode and it's like super like PlayStation 5 type graphics and it runs on the same engine that everything else does, and who cares if I'm viewing it as a super high def version of the game versus like something that's like just the standard client. I mean, we're still playing the same game. I'm not cheating the game by doing anything faster or anything like this. I'm just looking at it different, and that may appeal to some players and it may not, but those players at least have the option to play what they want. So
yeah, and the to speak to your point there, we did a lot of integrity changes. So the client that it's based on, the engine that it's based on, some things were different from the way that old school does it. So one example is like when you cast Vengeance, how your animation will stall back in the day, but they made an update so that it doesn't do that in the same way. So we have to also take that update and apply it to our engine to make sure that the game plays exactly how Jagex intends it to play.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was like something that we made sure that we were keeping those integrity changes so that old bugs couldn't be abused and such like that.
Oh, perfect. I did notice the dance was the 2008 dance. Like if you go into the regular client, you actually do the leg kick
Right.
wave. So you've even got the emotes updated.
Yeah. Animations. Yep.
Yeah,
definitely.
That's great. I love that too.
And the whip.
Yeah. So as far as this week goes, so you kind of got into the emotions of like, yeah, it was like kind of a, I'm sure it was devastating. It was a lot of like hard work that you're worried about. Where do you guys stand now kind of on things? What's your plan going forward? Do you even know what you're going to do? How are your feelings right now?
Personally, just seeing the support from our community for us, kind of re-inspired us a lot. Kind of what makes us want to work on it even more.
Oh, that's
we
great.
Can get over this hump. Personally, we're going to try to just continue as long as we can, for our community's sake, because there's a lot of people who enjoy it, and we do it for them. And I just am under the impression that X doesn't understand completely what this means, or the people that they would be affecting. Because there's a lot of passionate people who enjoy what we do.
Yep.
And really what we're doing it for. And just to blatantly shut it down without much reason, or not a very clear reason, was just confusing to us.
Right. Especially after months of having it live and, feeling like we're in the clear.
Trying to be transparent, just emailing them, wanting to establish communication, anything.
Yep, which is exactly why I wanted to have you guys on, because I wanted you guys to have that communication. Maybe somebody at Jagex sees this, maybe the community understands better, and the word gets back, and you get at least some sort of communication from Jagex, like knowing their reasons. I know the official kind of statement was they plan on releasing an HD client, but the way they kind of worded it was like, well, okay, so two things. So I got to speak in Jagex's. I don't want to speak on their behalf. I mean, if a JMod wants to come on this show and give their side of the stories, I'm more than welcome to take somebody on and hear what they have to say. But the official word from them was that they're coming out. They're in talks to have a HD client in the future, which made it sound like they sent out a memo that day to set up a meeting to maybe discuss it in a couple of years from now, which is kind of like a bit of a slap in the face. But like that's kind of their official line, is they're hoping to have that.
Right.
Now, if you want to get into the speculation part of things, like maybe they want to sell the client later. I've thought long and hard about what their reasoning might be. And the only thing I can come up with is they want to release their own client like 2 years down the road and have a big marketing campaign behind it saying like, here's our new HD client, come back to the game and play it, and kind of like an old school release type of thing. And like, maybe, but like in the meantime, you're pissing off like your entire fan base by telling fan projects, no, we don't want you. And if you really want to do that, why not just like go to you guys? You've already developed a client for them, and just either buy it or whatnot, just get it off of you and just release that into the game. Why are you like waiting 2 years to like have maybe discussions about it? So I don't. Yeah, 2 years. I'm just saying 2 years. I don't know that it's actually going to be 2 years, but everybody kind of knows how fast Jagex tends to move. Not trying to throw them under the bus too much there, but it's going to be a while. It's not going to be something they're going to release like in a couple of weeks. But do you have your own personal thoughts about what their reasing might be, or speculation, the fun stuff that we probably shouldn't say, but we do anyway?
2017, when they shut down OSHD, I remember I remember who stated it, but they said they were going to do their own HD back then in a few years, but that never happened. The reasons, again, this is their own vision of the game in 2008. This is 2008.
Yeah,
we
exactly.
are restoring it verbatim.
Mm-hmm.
This is Gower's vision of what the game should look like. Back then,
right?
And we proved it's possible. I mean, you're playing it right now, and I believe Jagex assuming they have all their assets backed up, I assume they could, if we could do it, they could do it definitely. The reason why they probably wouldn't go down our route is it will be expensive to update all the newer assets that Old School exclusively has,
Right.
and upgrade the tooling and retrain all their artists for that tooling.
Yeah. Well, you almost have an old new team because they got the old school version of it, which is like the 2007 graphics. They'd have to have like a 2008 team. But like I'm saying, they've already got you guys, which goes, okay, so if Jagex came to you and offered you a sum of money to buy this and release as a tool, would you be down for that? Or do you feel like this is your own pet project? You kind of want to keep ownership of it? What's your kind of feelings about that?
That one depends. Like, no, we wouldn't want to sell it outright and be like, "Hey, have full control over this project."
Mhm.
We got it to this point, and we would want to have some direction with it and keep developing on it. But I mean, the ultimate goal is to get this in as many hands really as possible because people loved it. So if Jagex was wanting to help us do that, I don't think it would really be a conversation of how much to buy. It'd be, what can we do to work together and, make this thing in as many hands as possible. We're not looking really for money is what I mean.
Exactly. You want the fans to have 2008 experience. Like that's what you guys like.
And I think this project is perfect for that because, the game's called Old School RuneScape, and a fan-made HD project makes sense because, the brand is Old School, and we never foresaw that they would want to make an HD client themselves because it kind of isn't in the brand.
Right.
That the whole premise of Old School was to go back to the early days and sort of redevelop and redesign the old school version of the game, and some people were then missing that HD version, and that's where we wanted to step in as a third party and say, here for those people who want it, here it is, and we definitely would want to work with Jagex to make something the best we can, really.
Oh, that's great.
Also, these graphics are, like, I guess, old school in my opinion. These are obviously not modern graphics by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
They're not like super high definition textures or crazy animations. These are still nice. It has the RuneScape identity. If you look at this and you know what RuneScape is, you just tell it's RuneScape. It's still old and it still keeps the original charm we feel. It just takes what old school is and puts it through a high resolution lens, but it still keeps its original charm of what RuneScape is. It's not perfect, it's not the best, but it's RuneScape.
Well, I think Tube K Archer said it the best. These aren't the old school graphics; these are the best graphics. Because this is what I'm familiar with, so I love it. And again, this is people that like freak out about like the graphics for RuneScape, like, oh, RuneScape shouldn't be played with great graphics. It's like an old school game; it should look like an old school game. Then this is optional. You don't have to play this. There's nobody forcing you to play this. If you like this one, play this one. If not, go to the old school. You have the choice, and it's still the same game in the back end. Is what I have to say.
By the way, you can still switch to SD mode in this thing.
Oh yeah, I noticed that too. I don't want to log out because I have to like sit there and type in the password. But yeah, there's
you don't have to log out.
It was like the old. How do you switch then? Is it up here on the top or?
Yeah.
In settings. Settings. Window mode. SD.
Oh, there you go. Okay, yeah. So you can actually switch back. Oh my gosh, let's change it back. Change it back. But yeah, so I mean, this is just like the clamp before. You had the option to do full screen and resizable and such like that. So this is definitely brings me back. I love it.
Everything and more is what we're going for. Anything that they had back then, any options, we wanted to restore it fully and then add to that at the end. So
that's great. So, to that point, so have you ever thought about making this like a Runelite plugin, or is that even something you could do? Is it possible with what you got, or?
We definitely could. In theory, we could. But that would introduce other complexities.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So we would have to go through Adam, and Adam would have to be burdened with having to support us.
And Adam's the owner.
Politics are involved.
Right.
Limitations. Any updates we would need to make to Runelite to make it possible, we would have to wait for approval with Adam, or it there would be resistance and limitations.
Yeah, I can
It
imagine.
would be more simple just to have free reign with our own client and distribution.
Yeah.
Right. Siphoning the whole community into one client makes sense to a certain degree, because then Jagex only has to communicate with that one client.
Right.
But for something practical, the practicality of this does not fit Runelite. So
yeah, I mean,
it
there's
would
arguments to both
work.
sides. I could see from Jagex' point of view if it was easier to just control one client, and it's like one less thing you have to worry about with like multiple clients running around. So that's why I kind of threw it out there. Not that I don't like this client. I think this client is great. But if it, for simplicity's sake, if Jagex said, okay, we can release this, but it has to be through Runelite, is it a possibility? And it looks like it is, which is good, because I want to see this project succeed, because I love the 2008 graphics. I want to have the option to film new videos if I were to ever do more videos. I want the 2008 option, because this is what I used to do, is 2008 type stuff. So that's good
Already,
to
we
hear.
still have to restore. So already is going to be the hardest place we have to restore. It's going to be a horrible task. It's going to take us like a week at least
Right.
to do this entire place. But back on track. The reason, another what we're probably touching on is why we're closed source. Well, we would prefer to open source it if we could, but there's a few good reasons why we couldn't.
Mhm.
Probably the first and foremost is it's probably not really ours to be holding that bug.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious too, if like Jagex were to make like an open source like type client project, because I was thinking sort of along those lines, like what if they made like the front end client something that was open source, and then people could just kind of create their own versions of like kind of the graphics. Then they would have control of it. You could have like check things into a GitLab and they can review it.
I think the downside with that was bots.
Was bots. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, and that's the reason why we probably the biggest reason. The second biggest reason. Well, the first one is it's not really ours to release in the first place. The assets, the client, the technology, a lot of it is simply a restoration of it. So without Jagex's blessing, it wouldn't really feel right. Even though it's probably widely out there already, but still. The second and most important reason is the technology we did to make this work. For example, the networking was another technical hurdle, probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, to make this work. In order for the client to communicate with the server, the live game, that was its own mountain to climb. If that technology was just open source, people can make packet bots, and those will make the mining problem much, much worse.
Right.
So it would just be grossly irresponsible to just release that technology out publicly. It's not what Runelite or most botting clients do with injection or reflection. This is direct communication with the server, which is something completely different, more dangerous.
Yeah.
Right. So what we did,
but that's the biggest reason why we can't just open source it. And without it, the client is useless. So.
So to his point, what we did was we made sure that aspect was fully secured, obfuscated to the point where it would be far harder for anybody to use our client to obtain that that information or to use it to make one than the regular RuneScape client. So yeah,
we made sure to protect it. Yeah, in case people want to try to exploit our client to gain that technology or make bots with it.
Right, but you'd be more than open than Jagex if they came in and did code reviews of your stuff. It's just to make sure you don't have any like backdoors or anything like that.
Oh, 100%.
100%.
Okay.
We
even offered. Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, see, that's the part I don't understand. Like, if you guys are willing to do that kind of stuff, you're giving them basically free code so that it's available and it's like something that you're kind of willing to help them out on. And if I was a gaming company and someone's like, "Oh, we're gonna improve your front end for you," I'd be all over that. I don't know what the hesitation is there, but so do you guys have any other thoughts or conversations you wanted to bring up, or any statements you want to give to the community in general about your project or anything like that?
I mean, first and foremost, big thanks to all of our community, HDOS, our Discord, the people who support us on YouTube. Huge shout out to all of those guys. It's why we're here, why we're still even fighting to try to make this happen. Unfortunately, we can't really hit everybody because we're censored on Reddit. So Reddit doesn't allow posts for HDOS because it's not a quote unquote official client. So hopefully we can make a solution for that pretty soon, and then we'll be able to reach more people as well. But yeah, I mean, it's all about the community, and we're very thankful for all of them.
Very much so. Some other confusing things, things I've noticed over the past few days. Some people think we're either associated with 117's project, which is not the case for one.
Right.
And the second thing is some people think we are OSHD or Reboot Other, and which they are a completely separate entity from us. We don't even know the developers. So that one of the bullet points, we're not OSHD, we're not 117. Was there any other confusion? People were going in our Discord asking questions, and so I just spotted some things.
Oh yeah, if you guys have any questions too in the stream, let us know too. We can get these guys to answer them for you. Hopefully, sure. I don't know. They're more than welcome to shoot them down and say there's no way I'm answering that. But do you? By the way, do you want to advertise what your Discord is, what your website is?
HDOS.dev, HDOS.dev.
Okay.
And the Discord link's on there. But yeah, kind of come in, say hi, come look at what our project's about.
Yeah, take a look at the screenshots and stuff. You can give the client a try. So you notice I'm not on my account, by the way. The only reason I'm not doing it is because I have a lifetime membership account, and if Jagex, for whatever reason, the higher ups say ban anybody that's using a third-party client, I don't want to lose that account. It should be mostly safe. Mod Matt K actually played this on one of his streams, and he hasn't had any problems. A lot of other people have played this one. I would probably be playing this and doing videos on this if I didn't have a highly valuable account that I didn't want to lose. So it should probably be safe for everybody. They haven't had any problems. Nobody's been banned for using this client. I just want to throw that out there.
I think MMK even used his PMod account or his JMod account.
Oh, really? Okay. There you go.
So. In-game time in our client, like how long people have used our client in-game since we started open beta, we hit 100K, I think.
Oh, wow.
A couple days ago? Yeah, 100,000 hours. So that's like a couple thousand years. So that's super cool to see. Hopefully that number will just keep going.
That's great.
Yeah, so glad to see people are using our client and enjoying it.
Yeah. So someone's asking, do you have any plan to smooth the UI upscaling, and what are your top 3 priorities in terms of future add-ons? Which is a great question.
Yes.
Perfect.
That's definitely one eventually. Right now we're working on performance. So we increase the render distance and utilize hardware better. So it's trying to keep the hardware requirements low.
It looks pretty good to me. I don't have a great video card, but I have a decent one, and it's running really smooth for me. So
and we can uncap the FPS. The experience on the newer version is just it's pretty great. I thought the client was great before, and I started using it. I go back to our client, I'm like, wow, it feels so slow and clunky. I'm like, we gotta get this done. So the performance. The thing is, we want to get performance done before we try moving on to bigger tasks like plugins. Because eventually we would want, ultimately, the next milestone is to integrate Runelite's plugins into our client.
So similar to Runelite, you want to have kind of the helper.
Identical to Runelite, because Runelite's open source, so we can implement their API and have their plugins for our client as well.
How hard do you think that would be? Like, how many months or weeks or so do you think it would take to integrate the two?
In theory, it shouldn't be that bad. We have strategy is most likely to have a compatibility layer initially, and then slowly improve them individually if need be. But in theory, it should be not that bad. It's the same theory as turning it into a plugin. It's just the same theory as importing the plugins and making it compatible with the client. Because the game engines maintain parity. That was an important uh, thing we did, was maintain parity with the old school engine. Because future updates, right? The client needs to be able to withstand random updates. Jagex throws down the pipeline.
How difficult is it to weather an update? Does that cause like you have to take the client down for a week, or is it pretty smooth? How's that work?
Same day, couple hours.
Okay, so there is like a little bit of a delay before you can kind of update everything.
At the moment, we look to improve that so that it can be, maybe 10 minutes. I think Runelite also has a short delay. I know most clients do have to do some manual work to get their clients up and running after an update. But an update, just a server update, and if they just update the cache with something or add some new content, that'll be update instantly, automatic. A revision update where they actually update the client itself, then that's going to take the couple hours or whatever that I was speaking to earlier.
So there's protocol updates and cache updates. The cache updates, we had to build a tool inside the client to automatically update itself, so it wouldn't have that downtime. So it basically looks at what the new assets and the new game files are, compares it with ours, and makes it work together, which was another magical piece of tech we had to make. And the second type of update is a protocol update, where the claim client updates. Now that's every update, the networking basically scrambles and obfuscates, and a whole slew of other things that could change, that could break us, and those are the things that we have to fix. Sometimes case by case. Sometimes it's just a few hours and can be automated. Other times, like huge updates, like the clan system, be down a little bit longer.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Oh wow.
The downside of approach, we took a different approach. Our client is completely our own. What we build, we have full control over the client. We directly communicate with the servers. Most other clients inject into all other clients inject into the live game. So basically, RuneScape releases a new client. They can inject into that client. So any updates to the client are automatically inherited when they update. With us, the downside of our approach, because not everything's perfect, is that big updates to the client we have to import into our client.
Right.
Is the downside. So those take longer, but those are far and few in between. So pros and cons, and accepted costs. But we can improve it over time, of course. Get that downtime lower.
Yep. Any other questions from the chat?
I have a question myself. So I'm actually in software QA, so I'm curious how many bugs are currently open on the project and that you're still trying to work on, and how many of you fixed kind of overall?
Right. So if you clump the bugs together, because a lot of them are like the same issue, but multiple bugs that are created from that issue, and they're usually just like one line of code to fix. It's mostly small stuff. So if you let those accumulate, then there's quite a few issues. I think. What are we up to as far as
open issues? There's 426. Closed issues 542. All issues close to 1,000. We've closed 542. There's 426 open. Most of them are graphical, but big up, and most of them will be fixed as we restore. It's usually individually case by case basis. So unless a bug is breaking gameplay, or it's a general bug that can fix multiple things at once, it's not. You can't balance priority that way. The live things will be fixed automatically as we restore assets and fix compatibility over time. So we kind of put those in the back burner.
Okay. So as far as like new, I think you kind of answered this before, but as far as like new characters that come out, what do you do to kind of adjust for? So I mentioned it comes out in
It's
old school. How do you adjust to make that work for the new client?
So what Brain was speaking to earlier, the approach that we took was for longevity's sake. So our design can automatically upgrade new content depending on what it is to so if a new, for example, NPC is brought into the game, that NPC, say it's a like a humanoid, like a human like NPC, that can automatically be upgraded to HD, like without us touching it at all. So that kind of thing, we don't have to touch it. For things that can't be updated in that way, we've already started on some of them, but we do plan to restore everything, including new content.
We're going to eventually, after plugins, the next milestone is to upgrade or HDify all of the new assets in old school, which will be its other major hurdle. But all content should just work automatically. That is the minimum common denominator that we must ensure. So if it's new content or it's anything old school, it will work. That's the goal. Even if it's not HD, it should just work magically.
So just pull together what asset, or you just kind of have everything mapped to something, and it should piece something together.
Exactly. And that was probably what took a long time. We had to. God, there's thousands of assets, as you can imagine, that we had to say this is that, this is that, this is that. We had to restore audio, graphics, models, objects, NPCs. We even had to make tools so we can like literally compare things left and right to each other and clicking like an arrow key, like checking it off, like yep, nope, yep, and just manually map a bunch of assets together. That was probably took a long time.
I can imagine.
Probably a month and a half, 2 months, just on handling that. I mean, of course, the work was distributed through that time so that multiple things were getting done. But yeah, it was long process for that one, and continuing. Yeah, some of our bugs that are open are just simply that, just pointing one thing to another, and then that's it. Issue solved.
Oh, by the way, so here's a fun command for you. What's the NPC for Jad? We can show him the mod command.
Oh, I'm not sure. I can look it up real quick though.
Hold on. We enable. Do you know how JMods can like transform into any NPC?
Right.
You seen that? Well, yeah. We gave users that ability.
Oh gosh.
Okay, I'm getting it right now.
Okay, it's super cool.
So it's
2147. Somebody in chat is saying.
Cool. So type in :
Me?
mod. Yes.
Where at? Yeah. Just in the normal chat?
Yep, it's a normal chat.
It's 3127. Yeah, 3127.
Okay, so : what?
Mod.
MOG.
MOG, okay.
3127?
Yeah,
space 3127.
3127. And that's it?
Yep, prisoner.
Now this is just for me though. I'm not like running around
of course.
A giant demon. Okay.
Combat works too. So try to go punching something.
Oh my gosh. I gotta. So this is stuff I love because as a video maker, this is stuff I want to do and have like open to me, but without breaking the game. So I'm not like, I can't punch for like 300 or something like that. I'm just walking around as myself. Yeah. But even though it's hard to see where exactly I am right now, I think I'm in here somewhere. I'm the right leg here, I believe. But, okay, I gotta run because. All right, go outside. There we go. He's struggling to get through the house here. This is great.
A little bit big.
But yeah, as a video maker, this is exactly what I want to do. It's like, okay, I need like a King Black Dragon in the middle of Lumbridge rather than sit there and like green screen it and take forever to cut it out. I could just do something
Exactly.
like this.
Yeah,
and I've got what I needed. It's so much easier. It's kind of why a lot of people moved to Minecraft back in the day, is because you had the flexibility to sit there and type in like kind of mod commands and turn yourself into whatever character you wanted. So if your script called for something, you could do something like this. So this is great to see. I love seeing this. I kind of wish Jagex would sign off on that. It's not breaking your game. Just please do it. Please, guys. We ask you.
Yeah. The one downfall, like Brain said earlier, is bots. If bots weren't an issue, I think they would definitely have some sort of like open modding community.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, people use it to profit in real life and can't really go for that as a company.
Yeah, I can see the point there. This is great. I'm going to have fun all day doing this now.
Try 1337.
One which one?
1337.
1337. Oh, lead. Okay. But just move right on the stool. Oh, that's amazing. Oh, this is great. Well, thank you so much, guys, for coming on. It was great talking to you and hearing your side of the story of this whole week. Once again, great talking to you. I'll read 117's email interview here after I get off the phone with you guys. But thank you once again.
Yeah. Thanks. And we're happy to talk to you in the future and, let you know any updates as we get them so that you can share that with your viewers.
Yep. Great. Thank you. Okay. It was great talking to him. So as far as 117, I messaged him for an interview. I wanted to have him on the podcast as well with these guys because both of them, I actually messaged them like the day of the whole incident. And I really wanted to get their feelings on everything and kind of see what's going on. But he messaged me back. He's like, I'd love to talk to you, but I'm really like kind of camera shy. He's introverted, which is understandable. I totally get that. So I didn't want to make him uncomfortable, but he did say he wanted to do an email interview with me. So I sent him kind of a list of questions, kind of the same things that I asked the HDOS guys. So I've got that here in Word. I'll read that out to you. I know it's not going to be as entertaining, but I'll kind of read that as we go, and you get kind of his feelings as to what his situation was. He's a little bit more different situation as well because he's doing a Runelite plugin. He was the one that kind of kicked off the whole issue with the community because he said he couldn't release the client, and then the community had the backlash, and then Jagex actually responded to him, unlike the HDOS guys. But so I asked him, like, when did he start work on his project and what was his motivation? He says he's a RuneScape player since 2004 and old school player since the first hour. He was elated with the return of the combat system. The nostalgic charm of ancient graphics wore off pretty quick. Looking back, he's surprised that he even played OSRS for 2 years in fixed screen mode in the dark days before resizable mode. I can relate with him on that one, as it was painful once you got the full screen mode, but we didn't know what we were missing out on. But the one aspect of my motivation, but the existence of this project was really the result of the stars aligning at the right time. I used to read comments on the old school subreddit discussions about the possibility of an HD mode coming into the game, wherein players were adamant that HD wasn't just possible. I would sometimes engage with these people in debate, and they would assure me that it was not feasible as every asset would need to be remade. So I suppose the desire to prove them wrong played a part too. I've had interest in graphics programming since 2007. It was really Halo 3 that grabbed my interest, a game that I still feel is one of the most visually beautiful games that I've ever played. Many will likely make the connection here that the origin of my alias 117 is based on the main character of the Halo series, Master Chief, aka Spartan 117. For a long time, I had a basic layman's understanding of the many graphical features commonly used in game, enough to understand what they are and sort of how they work, but with no real technical understanding. My apologies, by the way, for me reading. I'm terrible at reading. Will probably mispronounce all kinds of words. Like I said, I struggle saying any word that's like more than 3 syllables. So please forgive me if I'm butchering his letter here. In 2019, during the easily most difficult year of my life, full of absolutely unbelievable misfortune, I decided I needed a positive change. At that point, I spent a few years really trying to understand myself and my shortcomings. I developed a set of personal principles and decided my number one goal was to commit myself to a project, seeing it through to completion at all costs. I wasn't playing OSRS at the time, but was somewhat familiar with Adam's Runelite client and GPU plugin. So one day I dove in and started modifying the code, figuring out how things work and making simple changes. And that was it, the start of the project, the perfect storm. So then I asked him, what are you most proud of in your development? And he responded, not quitting. I'm the kind of person who always has personal projects going on and a long list of others I'd like to try. The problem is, for the most part of my life, I never completed them. The ones I did complete were very small in scope. It's hard to express the amount of self-doubt and inadequacy I felt while working on this project. I came so close to giving up so many times, but I always kept one word in mind: commit. Since I made my Twitter account, I have the phrase "no half measures" in my bio. Breaking Bad fans will recognize this as a quote from character Mike Emmertrout. I'm not familiar with that pronunciation. While I've fortunately cannot relate to the incredible dark content in which the line is used, it is a lesson on its own that has stuck with me. So my proudest achievement is the fact that I'm now on the verge of releasing this project when it could have been instead running on an old drive as an incomplete experiment that would never see the light of day. So the third question I asked him was, how many hours a week would you say you spent on this project? In one of his recent posts, he mentioned that he worked I mentioned that I worked on this project for 2,000 hours. I think it's a fair estimate, but it's very hard to gauge. Some weeks I didn't work on the project at all. Some months I put in single-digit hours. Some weeks were full of 10-plus hour days. Work on the project would ebb and flow depending on my free time and the desire to get something done. Sometimes, particularly when in the early phase of editing new features, I will work on the project obsessively. So I would say about 20 hours a week on average is probably on the lower end, if anything. I think it would be way more. There was so much learning, experimenting, iterating, rewriting, testing, and fixing that it might have been a 3,000-hour project. So kind of like making a RuneScape video. There's a lot of similarities there. What were the biggest challenges that you found during the project development? He says, working within the confines of a third-party client with limited access to the underlying archaic game client. Adam's work on Runelite is nothing short of incredible, including his GPU plugin, which so accurately reproduces the vanilla software's rendering quirks, which is necessary to make it all work correctly. But the nature of the project means that there have been some tricky restrictions which have forced some creative problem solving. Fortunately, I enjoy creative problem solving, probably a little too much. It ended up being the lifeblood of the project. For example, if you take existing water, which is flat tile with a texture, you add a nice transparent watery shader to it, but there's no terrain underneath. It's just an abyss. So what do? You can hand sculpt some new terrain, save that data to a file, and load it in when you need it. The problem is that the approach takes a lot of time to do the work by hand and requires a lot of upkeep when the game world is expanded. Instead, I took an entirely procedural approach in which a bunch of data is computed each time a new scene loads so that the underwater terrain is generated from scratch, with the depth of the water increasing further from the shore. Procedural content generation like this was difficult to tackle, but the results is very hands-off. It's similar to what the HDOS team said. So it's good to know that this, if there's an update in the game, it's not going to take like weeks for updates to come out. So that's good to know. So next I offered, how often did you try to contact Jagex and what was their response up till this past week? So he didn't try to contact Jagex. As naive as that is, the principle Jagex had set seemed clear to me. You can release open source projects freely as long as they don't break game rules, which is kind of the same principle HDOS was talking about, but they did try to contact Jagex. So at the start of this project, the thought of contacting Jagex hadn't even crossed my mind, as it was a small what-if experiment. I announced the project on a whim on January 17th last year. Yes, purely because of the connection to my username, as silly as that is, and the rest was history. It had received enough attention that Jagex obviously knew it existed, so I figured there wasn't a problem. As the saying goes, it's easier to beg for forgiveness than seek permission. Who knows how things would have panned out had I asked permission. So I asked him, this must have been a roller coaster week for him. When and how did you get this week's message from Jagex, and what were your initial feelings? So he doesn't really want to talk about the how and when, but he does say, when I received the notice from Jagex to shut down the project, I was utterly disheartened. So much love and passion, such an arduous personal journey, all for nothing. Well, not quite nothing. Any experience is only completely fruitless if you let it be. I was left with the foundations of a skill set I value and a journey of self-improvement that has positively changed my direction of life. That's a very good, positive way to view it. Still, my heart was set on releasing this project into the wild, and I felt a sense of obligation to the many OSRS players who had supported me up to that point. While it wouldn't have been an entire loss, the thought of never sharing my work made me feel so hollow. Seventh question I asked him is, can you describe the timeline of events and emotions of what happened from then until now? You said it best when you described the week as a roller coaster. I started with all the negative feelings, the sense of loss and frustration, but I held on to a shred of optimism knowing that Jagex is in the early stages of their own graphical improvement project. It gave me a unique position to compromise as I've collected what I feel is a valuable experience and feedback over the past 2 years. As the wise Michael Scott once said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. That's Wayne Gretzky anyway. That's Michael Scott re-quoting him. So he took his shot. I laid out my suggestions for what I felt was a fair compromise. They responded by rejecting my offer and reiterated that they wanted me to shut my project down. As you can imagine, that glimmer of optimism was gone. I had hit a wall, and all I could do was break the news to my supporters. That was the beginning of the outrage. I knew there would be frustration, but nothing could have prepared me for the scale of it. It was immediate, it was fierce, it was unwavering. For me, it was exciting, intimidating, overwhelming, and comforting. With 70,000 plus upvotes on Reddit, 10,000 likes on Twitter, it was far more attention than I had ever received before. While some were frustrated about my project, for many others it was a matter of principle that had become something bigger. It was a company versus the community that's filling their pockets, and the community demanded that they should be heard. It just happened to be at the center. I just happened to be at the center of it. My project being the catalyst that sparked the reaction. It was all very surreal. Many people reached out to me with thoughtful messages of reassurance. To those of you who did, thank you sincerely. Some people expressed their frustrations by verbally attacking Jagex employees, which was disappointing to see. The memes were and still are great, but that's no surprise from this community. So now, of course, Jagex have listened. When they delivered that news to me, it was a huge moment of relief knowing that I would get to pass this message on and the project would live. While I disagree with how Jagex handled the situation early on, I have ultimately been very satisfied with their response. The few JMods I've been in contact with are incredibly nice, and they have so clearly embraced this project instead of simply accepting it and tolerating it. So I asked him, what have you heard from Jagex as to their initial reasoning for stopping these HG projects? He said he wasn't comfortable answering this one, and it's pretty much what was publicly spelled out in Twitter, which was that they wanted to do their own HG project. So then I asked, what details can you share now that it appears you will be allowed to release your project on Monday? He says, I will be maintaining a collaborative relationship with Jagex to keep my project in line with their vision for the game, while sharing my experiences with them to hopefully steer the project in a direction that the community will be happy with. It's a really great outcome, as having artistic input from those who dream up the game world gives my project authenticity and soul. It's something that I had literally hoped for while working on the project. It also means that we as a community get to shape their upcoming HD mode more directly. So then I asked him what were his current plans going forward, if he even knew yet. And so he says his immediate plan is to get through the release, fix the many problems that I'm sure will crop up, and make whatever changes are necessary to improve compatibility with different combinations of hardware. Beyond that, I have a long list of ideas for new features that I think the community will enjoy. I won't go into specifics yet, as I'm not sure what I'll be working on first, but I'm very excited to start working on them. Then finally I asked, do you have any final thoughts or words you'd like to share with the community about this? He says, I'm fairly happy with where the project is in terms of aesthetics, but it's not quite where I want to be. This release is intended to be a solid foundation upon which to build. It is not my end goal. To anyone who uses the plugin, please keep this in mind if some things don't work out quite right, or areas of the game look dull and untouched, etc. In a similar vein, this project is also technically incomplete. Upon release, it will be in beta state, so it will have some bugs. Performance may not be ideal. You should expect to experience some game crashes. Be careful when taking part in any dangerous activities for the time being, particularly if you're playing a hardcore Iron Man. Please use and enjoy the plugin when it is released. Share any feedback you have, good or bad. Over the weekend, I'll be creating a Discord server for feedback and discussions. The details will be posted on Twitter and Reddit on Monday. His Twitter account, by the way, is, I believe, just 117. Finally, he'd like to thank everyone for their support. Your voices have made a very real difference, and never forget what a community is capable of. And that's all I have from him. So hopefully that was interesting for everybody. If you don't guys have any final comments or anything you'd like to say. But as far as the community response, I'm old enough to remember the Falador riots back when they took away free trade. And this kind of had the same vibe. It wasn't quite as big as that one, but the response from the community was definitely brought me back to those days, where people are just in Falador and raising fuss, and people were on Twitter retweeting, Reddit, like I said, 70,000. It was like the highest upvoted thing on Reddit this week during the day it happened. So it was just really great to see the community kind of rally behind something. Like all the big video makers of today were all kind of not jumping on the bandwagon, but posting their thoughts, and everyone's pretty much in unison, in agreement that this was a bad thing, that Jagex kind of needed to listen to their player base and be open to projects like this and do the right thing. And it looks like we were heard. Jagex responded. We got what we wanted. I'm hoping the HDOS team gets kind of the same treatment, because I also really love, like, as you see, this 2008 project is just beautiful to look at. Both clients, honestly, are something I want to see in the game. It's something you should have the option to have. If you want to play in HD, you should have that option. If you want to play in 2008, you should have that option. I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast today. Like I said, it was a little bit later than normal, but I'm glad to see all the people in chat.